This is a story about a journey of cultural development in Armadale over the last 2 years.
Over the last couple of years, I've definitely seen a big shift in the cultural development in the city of Armadale, purely from, I guess, the sake of inclusion. Everyone feels more included, there's more variety, and a more variety of local artists. And then it's so lovely to see someone and go, hey, haven't I seen them around? And then you go and talk to them and you go, yeah, they live in this area.
It definitely is working, the last 12 months or so, and all these beautiful events going on, and I think it's hopefully Armadale's it's lifting, and it's working. I love it. It's good stuff.
Great for me, being a local girl and based in Armadale, to come and I think really grow our community. Also as a Noongar woman, as an Aboriginal person, to for our kids and our younger folk and our youth to see that.
The whole atmosphere in the area changed overnight, didn't it? There was a palpable feeling in the community that at last something good was happening. I think anybody had realised that this is good for the community.
It has changed unbelievably, and I'm so glad because it was very, very needed.
Oh, it's incredible. I'm a bit of a hardened arts person. I've been around for many decades, but to see this evolve positively and so rapidly is a delight for me.
It's actually a case of people being involved and people taking ownership, which is the whole aim of cultural and community development, is people doing it in their own communities.
This is a story that shows real people, real artists in the Armadale region, talking about how it feels to be genuinely involved in a number of arts projects. It's a story of what happens when you let local community lead and local people respond to opportunities to get involved. It's a story of artists from a community creating both art, culture, and also their own community.
Well, we moved here 50 years ago. There was absolutely nothing cultural at all. There were no art displays or anything of any description.
Well, I think it was 32 years ago now, and when we first came to Bedfordale, there was actually not much here. It's lovely working alone, and it's really nice with the radio on and lovely bush, and you're doing your own work, but it's also lonely. And so therefore, getting to know the community and people around me, and sharing what I was doing.
I felt also that we needed this sort of thing to counter the image of Armadale as, cheap housing, crime. And I thought it needed something that would improve it.
Seeing that this area, which in the paper recently has been designated the most criminally active suburb in the whole of Perth, actually has a whole lot more to it than this reputation. So bringing the creative spirit out into the community, I think it makes people feel a whole lot happier for a start. The greater sense of connection and a whole sense that something's actually happening in this place.
It's got a bad rap. Armadale, the real Armadale, is not what you read and hear on the news. That's not Armadale. It's part of it, sure, but it's part of it in any community has got that. But with Armadale, there's a difference in the community. There's a real willingness and a feeling of wanting to be part of a community.
Well, I think it's probably the environment. First of all, it's beautiful. We're amongst nature all day, and a lot of artists find that inspiring, and a lot of their work comes from nature. And so basically that's one of the reasons. Not only did I have a studio on my own property, but it also was in the most beautiful location in nature.
What attracted me to this area was just the beautiful trees and just the wildlife, the birds, and just the peace that was up here. And just fell in love with it, and we've been here ever since. We still love it.
I was really curious about the community, so my initial research of it was just completely inspiring. To me, it immediately exuded a combination of rural and urban, immense opportunity, enthusiasm, so from my point of view, huge opportunity that was backed up by an intelligent community, I found out a little later.
The City of Armadale started to recognise that many creative people lived and worked in Armadale, but weren't necessarily well connected. So they were keen on changing the way that things were done, beginning to talk with artists quietly and with respect.
One of our previous mayors used to call Armadale a city of villages, where there were individual villages. You know, we had the Rollystone Hills, we've got Kelmscott with the historic sort of town site, and then there's other areas, and then new growth areas, and then you've got the infill ones that are probably not as affluent. So he called it a city of villages, but a city of villages that had connections, and I think the cultural development side of things is one of those connections. The role itself was a reflection of what council was asking us to do and needing the expertise to be able to do that. Now, local government does it in two ways. We either buy it in and we get consultants and contractors in, or we bring it in-house. And having it in-house means you've got a resource or a staff member that actually knows what the rest of the community development team is doing as well, and what the priorities are for the Community Services Directorate and the council. So in other words, they're living it. They're not just coming in and giving it, they're actually living it the whole time.
I think they should realise this, and the biggest need for the council has been the ability to listen.
Being able to listen is crucial. So not coming in with the answer, coming in with the questions, and then getting to an answer. Being able to listen to what the community wants for itself, not what someone thinks the community should have.
Reinforce their worth, find out what assets they bring to the plate, and then allow them to feed back what they want to do. What you end up with is an Armadale in the last 18 months.
It's a catalyst. Having someone to start it as a catalyst. It's probably local government's role, is to start it, but not necessarily have to finish it.
It's incredibly rapid, the evolution here. So I'm excited by it.
The story allows us to see what happens when you ask first. When you ask first, it helps build relationships. It gives you opportunities to bring people together, to build creative, collaborative initiatives. When you ask first, it helps you draw upon the creative assets, the intelligence, and the highly developed deep thinking that artists bring with them. When you ask first, genuinely, people like to get involved.
I'd been thinking for some time about what could we in this community do in terms of the art scene, and I knew that other communities had open studio art trails, so I thought, well, why can't we? And I just thought, well, it's probably a simple process of going to, putting adverts in the newspaper, and then I thought, no, that's not going to work. So I thought, I wonder if the local council would be interested in being involved in this.
Yes, it was very good that the artists were listened to and they could put their ideas, and they were scrutinised by the other artists, and meeting like that and putting the program together that way, than rather somebody organising something and telling us how it's going to happen, was so good, so good. It was, we were kind of listened to and honoured, and our ideas were very taken as big value.
Well, I thought it was wonderful having the artists involved in it, and just having the backing of the Shire to come along beside each one of us and just give us the expertise we didn't know, how to go about doing things. And I learned a lot by doing that, and it was also great to connect with the other artists, and everybody had ideas that they contributed to it, and I think that really helped it just snowball, and it was great.
I really appreciated the opportunity to be invited along and participate in shaping a festival. It was wonderful that our input was sought, all the different aspects of the festival. We had a hand in creating. It gave us a sense of ownership.
I thought it was a great idea, actually, to have people go along and give people ideas and say, if you're interested in doing something, then champion it. So people could have a passion, they could write it down on the board, and then they were encouraged to champion that particular event themselves. And I thought that was fantastic, because it was collaboration at its best. And so the people that were enthusiastic and that are enthusiastic and passionate about what they do were able to have a forum to present it. And I just thought that was, I thought that was fantastic, yeah.
I think they came out of isolation. They started to collaborate. That doesn't mean they've collaborated artistically. No one's looking like anybody else on the page or in their textiles or something like that. But they've worked together. So this community has actually evolved. They've done what I would have hoped that they've done. But you can dream that when it actually happens so rapidly, that's a marvellous affirmation to me.
I think it was a good thing, because it brought the artists together, really, because we were all scattered around and we didn't really know about each other most of the time, So we got to know each other, which was great, and we can now help each other as well to continue with our art practices. And we know we're not on our own.
You can't create a sense of community academically or administratively. It was to walk in that kind of buoyancy and enthusiasm and positivity. That's artists talking positively to each other.
The initial artist-driven initiative was the Armadale Hills Open Studio Arts Trail. All of this was during the spring season, when the jarrah bush is at its most stunning. The first trail took 2,500 visitors through the surrounds of the Armadale Hills region, visiting artist studios nestled in bushland areas. The 8-day trail generated $24,000 sales to the artists from the $6,000 cultural investment by the City of Armadale.
The Armadale Hills Open Studio Art Trail was actually an event which took place over 8 days, so over Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 2 weekends, essentially. So we had textile artists, we had painters, we had people who made the most fantastic clothing for adults and children. We had painters who actually were quite famous in the region and outside of Australia as well. So we actually got to see a whole sort of series of echelons of art makers, from the people who are just really emerging artists and those who've made it, essentially. So all of that is here.
The Open Studio Arts Trail was a great success. Basically, it enabled the artists to have the general public come to visit our studios, and we interacted with the general public, and people were really inspired. The general public were really inspired by coming into our workplaces.
Everybody was really interested in what we were doing, and we were all working at the same time as they were coming round, so they were all interested in the process of our artwork, because we're all different. The people that visited, I think, were just blown away by the way that artists produced.
My observation of the Open Studio Arts Trail was massive increase of pride. To have the artists going through from shyly explaining that they do this but to welcome to my studio, they were different people. The quantity of the art, the quality of the art. I think in terms of what it does to Armadale is it establishes them as assets of Armadale, assets of the Armadale arts community, and they ain't going anywhere. They're proudly parts of this community. And I think they knew that they had created this winning cultural tourism event. You can't buy that kind of creative pride and pride for the environment, the community.
I had neighbours come out that I didn't even know existed, and just about everybody in the street came up and oh, we've been hearing the noise going on, we want to know what's going on, and wow, this is great, you know. It was just wonderful feedback. My neighbour even bought a painting from me.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised that people were actually buying off the rack in my studio.
I had a fabulous day, and it was great talking to the artists, but also talking to the other people who were going through the artists' studios themselves and what value they got out of it.
Well, honestly, to start with, I thought, oh, well, I hope a few people come. I really hope, I really, really hope, and the signs were out, a few people come. Well, people were here and now the first, just coming, I think 500 people came through. Somehow people really showed their niceness, their love for one another. It was through the arts and the cups of tea and the talking and the walking. So I got much more than I ever thought I would.
The new Armadale Arts Festival opened up additional opportunities for local people to genuinely get involved and create their own arts festival with a real Armadale personality. New elements of the festival included the publishing of a local writers' anthology, a sold-out classical concert led by a nationally recognised master who was also a resident of Armadale, a festival club for local performers, and the appointment of a festival artist.
So for a number of years, Council had been asking us to reinvigorate Minnarora Festival, but they didn't know exactly what that meant. And so there was a couple of different approaches that we did, to the point that some councillors were of the opinion that it wasn't worthwhile anymore, that the money that they were expending on it wasn't value for money. And alongside the Minnarora Festival was the Minnarora Art Award. And the Minnarora Art Award is what Council has always thought of as its flagship. Taking the idea of that as its centre and then moving outside and around it to create a festival around the Art Award was the plan that worked.
So happy that I didn't have to go to another suburb to take part in their festival, because you get asked if you're good, they come around and ask, can you come to our festival? That we had our own festival. That was important, that I was in my own community, my own area. I didn't have to go to another place to show my work.
I think the sense of pride actually was quite phenomenal afterwards, because certainly I believe John Christmas, as far as I know, I didn't talk to him myself, but I think he'd been wanting to do this kind of thing for years and years and years, and finally to have his dream come true. I mean, how great is that? Wonderful, yeah.
John's one of those residents that like to keep his council on their toes, and it's good. That's healthy, and for him to come back and see the value of what we're doing, that shows that we're doing the right thing, I think.
To sit there on stage and see the church packed and the people giving rapt attention all night and enjoying the wine and food at interval, which was a great innovation, and then finding council officers coming up to me at interval and saying, well done, great concert, and then again at the end. And obviously we're genuinely delighted.
Yeah, the festival club was incredible, I thought, and the range of entertainment there was just amazing. And I think Armadale probably would really benefit from something like that more regularly.
We had the opportunity with the Armadale Arts Festival and Happy Gathering to create a show for that event where local musicians could come together and bring our talents. So Katherine and Elisabeth came about through, ideas thrown together between local artists.
Lily is amazing. Lily is I always said it's like yin and yang. We're complete opposites. She's just cool and calm and collected, and I'm always talking to you, how about this, rah, rah, and
it strengthens our community as a whole, and to be part of that, I feel valued as a musician, as a singer in the Armadale area, and I feel like it can only grow from here, and to create those kind of opportunities for local artists is just amazing.
I was absolutely thrilled that Trudi was selected as the festival artist. She had been giving to this community for such a long time. Whatever she learnt, she then shared with others.
You get Trudi, who is iconic in Western Australia, but unrecognised from the wider community, which you guys have actually escalated, fortunately, in a positive way. You've acknowledged that this person deserves to be an elder stateswoman.
And now our local community can see that they have a national treasure in their midst, and that's wonderful.
I was very sort of surprised, and then I thought, am I good enough? And then I was very honoured, and somehow stuff that I had been saying for years to the public, all of a sudden I had a voice, and somehow the public was listening. And I made a speech, and somehow it got through. And people, it was, I think in a little way I made a bit of a difference somehow.
The Music in the Mall project is another strong example of the value of using a cultural development approach to respond to social challenges and keep community together. It helped do two things at the same time. It helped activate the city's central space in a positive way, whilst at the same time building connections and camaraderie of local musicians.
The Joel Street Mall, famous here in Armadale for its antisocial behaviour and the issues that we have in the Joel Street Mall. We also were tasked with trying to activate that space. And a different aspect that came through from the cultural development was the music in the mall. So musicians were included, so we're not just talking about visual artists, we're now talking about performers. And that became another sort of aspect to it.
When we first came to the Joel Street Mall, I think a few band members were a bit apprehensive, like they weren't sure what the response from the crowd was. But the first gig we did out in the open at Joel Street Mall was so well received by everybody. We had people dancing in the street, literally, and families, kids, everybody, even, the stereotypical sort of danger people that you'd look out for, like rougher looking people, would stop, and then, you'd be worried that they might start heckling you, but they actually got involved in the clean fun, and they were cheering on all the kids dancing and things like that. So it was kind of good. It brought people together, I think. It was good.
Yeah. Without a doubt, these new initiatives that have been going on has certainly stimulated a lot of interest in the local musicians, which I think is fantastic. And to go down there to the mall and see huge crowds watching, local acts and stuff, and it's just, wonderful to see. I think, full 10 points, for that to be occurring. It's just great. And to be part of that is wonderful as well, really good.
If you don't have somewhere in the area where the local musicians can play in their own area, you're robbing that area of those musicians' performances. So you can't see them play in that area. So then their performance and their hard work gets attributed to another area where they would perform, such as an Armadale band then playing in Fremantle. Everybody goes to Fremantle to see that band. And rather than Armadale becoming the home of that band, Fremantle becomes the home of that band. That's a pretty good example.
I think we need to create more activity to show the local people or the community people we exist, to offer, the music, something like that, That was important for me. The only I can help, to this country, on the culture,
The benefits of the community is huge, I think. not only giving people happiness, hopefully, from music, which I love to do. I love to perform, and if I can see people smiling or enjoying the music and giving you something back, that's everything. And the more we can get out there and play, that'll happen more, I think. And so that's a big one for me. And look, if we can inspire people to realise, hey, you know, music is played. It's not just something you get out of a device like an iPad or something. It's actually, music is actually created by people. So when you see people, being happy by what you do, and you get looks from all ages of people. People, you know, even younger teenagers and stuff, they hang around and go, oh, wow, that's interesting. You know, so that's a great feeling to, you know, hopefully, you know, stimulate these people into seeing new music they would never have heard before.
Culture and arts is valued in different ways by different people. However, a common theme is that when we encourage people's creativity, it leads to a connected and communal culture, something that local people can identify with and draw upon.
I think any local government that gets into anything that's about investing in culture and the arts needs to think about why they're doing it. For what purpose is it relevant to their community? In our case, Armadale already had the community spirit, it just needed a way of celebrating it. And culture and the arts actually brought that together. So it gave people a reason to come together, and not just for a picnic or an everyday thing. It was something about learning about their own stories and their own heritage and how they live and how different they all are, but how similar they can be as well.
The arts is a very inexpensive investment for a great return.
As far as an investment, it depends on how you approach it. For example, it doesn't have to be a lot of financial cost. It's usually time and more a dedicated resource initially. And that doesn't have to be forever and a day, depending on what outcomes the local government's trying to achieve for it. So a dedicated resource for 2 or 3 years to get things initiated and started is a good starting point, without having to go the whole hog to say that we're going to do a complete cultural plan, or we're going to have X amount of performance spaces, or we're going to go into, you know, dollars for venues and coordination of events and all that sort of thing. It can be done on a smaller scale to let it grow naturally and organically.
But it needs to, after 2 years, to be allowed to grow predominantly under their terms, not to have them over-curated, over-bureaucratised or administrated, because what you have here is a natural asset. They know how to do this. They just need celebration, confirmation of their worth, and the small amount of administrative support and guidance that they ask for. That happens, you'll get a town known for cultural tourism and a place to go to see great art.
You know, if there's a cultural push and you get people involved who are interested in the community, if there's enough people want the good things, it minimises the bad things that the other people do. And the public image is important anyway. I mean, from a business point of view, it's not only of the cultural life, but businesses will be more likely to come to Armadale if there's a good vibe.
I think art culture brings value. I think that any society that hasn't developed their culture in the arts and music and writing and that are probably pretty backward. And I think it's a reflection of a developed culture of society.
I think if we can start local, you know, and develop our community, it strengthens us as a community, as a people, you know. Me being a Noongar woman, I know a lot of our youth are, you know, musical, they're creative, they're dancers, and I think if they see me there, you know, they see other Aboriginal kids in a positive light, I think it, you know, strengthens us as a whole community and as a people as well, to go forward.
The sense of community and belonging and unity, and I guess being able to no longer be afraid to say, hey, I'm from Armadale, I'm from Kelmscott, and you're no longer afraid to say that because look at the quality of what's there.
I've sort of said that really it's about bringing people together in the community, and that's what it does. It creates a community spirit. I think that's the most important thing.
building resilience in the community. Its mental health is improved, health and well-being overall is improved, standard of living is improved.
I think encouraging people to express their creativity, to come out and be members of groups, to be part of something is hugely important. I mean, we are suffering from loneliness, a lot of us. There's a huge amount of anxiety and depression going on in society. And I think if you encourage people to paint or draw or do pottery or whatever the music, the whole cultural dynamic, which is huge, and I think the more you encourage it, the more it benefits society.
It's making, it's doing, it's happiness. That's art, really. Maybe we have been a bit brainwashed what art really is. It's a human. People have always wanted to put a mark. The cave paintings, make a mark, do something. I've been here, I've done this, this is mine, you know? And look at it, look at it. So, otherwise, if we don't, we become very lonely, and then you get all sorts of physical and mental problems. That's my feeling.
I'm a visual person, so that's how I express myself, and I have opinions that I can express that way, and I can probably bring to the viewer the fact that nature is important and we should look after it.
So it's having such a wide range of benefits. It's not just about an event, it's about what happens around that event and why, and the benefits coming out of it on the ground. In bringing those sort of experiences for Armadale, is showing that Armadale does have its own culture. It's brilliant.
This is a story of a number of things. It's a story of respect for and understanding of artists and the arts. It's a story of investing in real, authentic relationships, relationships that will result in trust and productivity. It's a story of celebrating artists, starting with their assets. It's also about having the courage to let creative and intelligent people lead and not manage or resist the urge to manage from above. It's a story of arts and culture as a serious element in the life of a community. It's also a story of council officers working like artists and actually being artful in their relationships with people that live in their community.
The act of being creative is not a high art form necessarily, but it has a real benefit. And the work that we do in cultural development assists those people to achieve their goals and move forward, and it really does make an impact on their daily lives. If you can get behind community-driven projects that achieve the city's objectives, then it's a win-win situation for everyone, and that's what the council's here for. It is hard to measure the intangible benefits of how people feel, but it's important that this is what we're talking about. It's how people feel in their community, how they're connected to the community, how they're connected to each other.
So it's incredibly important, actually, because it's not just about, you know, business and financial benefit. It's about bringing life and spirit to an area.
And it's not just the arts, it's mental health, well-being, happiness, all comes with it. Everything comes with it.
I think I don't think it can be stressed enough, that connection with people, in that the creativity of making and doing is hugely important to people's well-being in general.
It's giving Armadale something to celebrate. You know, something that it's tangible in some regards, where it's the actual events and they can actually be involved, but it's intangible in that how it's probably making them feel about where they live.
It's the artist, it's the heritage that defines one city from the next. I'm not naive about the necessity for the financial and the economic health, but in every instance that I know of, it's inevitably what, when I go to a town, whether it's Armadale or somewhere else, I'm wanting to see what defines this town, what's its heritage, what makes it beautiful, who are these people, how do they exchange, create, build their societies and their groups. That's the arts.
Building the hearts and minds of people depends upon the nurturing of artistic and creative opportunities for everyone within our community.